The Radio Forest Podcast.
Hey, Forrest, it's Tim from SOiL.
Tim, what's happening, man? How are you?
I'm doing good. How are you, buddy?
Good. We're here to talk about SOiL and your tour. But first, I've got a question. Is Oppressor back together?
Yes, we are. Gluttons for punishment.
So Oppressor's your band before SOiL. It's sonically quite a bit heavier and faster. What made you get that band back together, or did you guys stay in contact?
Well, the thing is, me and Adam formed Oppressor, my guitar player from SOiL. It was a death metal band. Did really well back in the day, but we never quite pierced the veil to become like a Cannibal Corpse or Obituary or Deicide or anything. And SOiL took over and rose to the fame that SOiL rose to and stuff. But all that technical death metal is coming back in swing, and crazy enough, so many people started labeling us as one of the innovators of technical death metal, which we never thought we were, but allegedly, all these years later, we're being lumped kind of into the grandfathers of technical death metal, along with Cynic and Atheist and Nocturnus and stuff like that. So we got an amazing offer to play the Maryland Death Fest. So I called the rest of the guys and said, hey, you think we could relearn this or even play it? So we're, yeah, let's try it. Let's do it. So the fans have been demanding it for ages, and we haven't played. The last show we did was 25 years ago with Oppressor. So we were just kids, back then. So it's going to be really cool. So we're pretty excited about it. Whether we do more shows or an album or more whatever remains to be seen. But as of right now, it's just one reunion show, and we'll see where it goes from there. For the reunion show, you should just play SOiL songs and get booed off stage. I was going to say that we'd probably get a bunch of beer bottles thrown at us at that.
How was the love overseas for Oppressor? Because you guys did some serious touring too, and I just imagine that Europe is more into rock and also heavier bands like a lot of the ones that you mentioned.
Yeah, our first tour over in Europe was with Cradle of Filth, and it was gigantic. And then we came back and, with Malevolent Creation, and we only went over there a couple of times, but the response for Oppressor over in Europe was fantastic. And same with the States. We toured with Cannibal Corpse over here, and Immolation and Malevolent Creation again, and Gorgot, tons of the death metal festivals and stuff like that. But we did fairly well for ourselves. Like I said, we never were one of those top echelon bands, but we were a good mid-level death metal band for the time when we came out in the early 90s.
So Oppressor back together, but SOiL, you guys have never broken up. But can you tell me about the era when Ryan left the band, what that felt like? Then he ends up in Drowning Pool and eventually back to the band. Can you talk about that era of the band and what was going on with you, the rest of the group, and how you guys handled that?
Yeah, it was a real weird time. SOiL, as of January of this year, has been together for 27 years. And like you were saying earlier, we never took a break. We never went on hiatus. We never broke up. We never stopped. So we were always just one of those bands that just kept pushing forward. Ryan was in the band for 7 years. He got really burnt out because we were touring nonstop. For the debut record, Throttle Junkies, we didn't do much touring, but when we got signed to the major label, Clive Davis's label, J Records, and put out Scars, and Scars started to pop and become a hit album, we had toured for 13 months straight on that record. We added up and we got about 2 weeks off during that entire time. So we were burning the candle at both ends. And after we finished that record, we immediately went back into the writing process, into the studio to do the follow-up Redefine, and then went touring for, close to a year on that record. So Ryan, during that time, had a baby and gotten married and all, but the rest of us were still single. So we didn't quite understand the family life. We were just in road mode. So he got really burnt out and decided to leave the band, and we just wanted to keep on going on. So we actually got the singer AJ. It was a recommendation from Wayne Static of Static X. And we brought AJ into the band for the first of 2 records, which was True Self. During that time was kind of when the whole new metal scene and stuff was starting to take a downturn, and metalcore and the white belts and blue jeans were coming back. That was kind of started to take over the scene. Although the True Self record did do really well, it wasn't as popular as the other ones. And then we put out a second record with AJ called True Self, but this time around, we made this song called The Lesser Man, and it actually was our third biggest radio single. It had really started to pop at rock radio. Again, we went on a super heavy touring schedule. The band really self-imploded after that because it was so rigorous. We had another song popping at radio, and it was just like tour after tour after tour. We were doing acoustic shows in the morning on radio and local TV shows, and we'd play a show at night, and we'd have 14 shows in a row without a break. I mean, it was just brutal, and the band just completely self-imploded during that time. Ryan was actually in Drowning Pool for about 7 years at that point, and those guys weren't getting along, and SOiL wasn't getting along, so we basically, me and Adam reached back out to Ryan. A couple of the other members didn't have a very good relationship with Ryan, but since me and Adam were the only ones left in the band and did have a good rapport still with Ryan, we talked about, him coming back, and he did. He came back, and we got the drummer of Staind, John Masaki, to play drums because he had quit Staind. So we just kind of reformed SOiL with, 3 core members and the drummer of Staind, and made a massive comeback, actually. And Ryan's been back in the band for 12 years at this point. And we've gone through a couple different drummers, but, we finally settled on Tantric drummer TJ Taylor, who's been in the band about 7 years, and he's awesome. He's part of the family. Again, Drowning Pool being the band of revolving lead singers, had a falling out with their most recent singer. Ryan, that's all he does is sing and tour. And since SOiL, as we've gotten older, we've become more of a part-time touring band. We don't hit it as hard as we did. And Drowning Pool actually became that too, a part-time touring band. So with Ryan wanting to tour full-time, we all sat down, and instead of, like we did the first time, like, oh, you're stealing my singer and this and that, and all of us, in a huff with each other, we just sat down and talked like adults and figured out a way that we could make it work so that both bands would know each other's schedules, and we could utilize Ryan when we needed him, and Drowning Pool could utilize Ryan when he needed him, and it's worked out great. It's been a year so far. Crazy to believe, but it's been a year now that Ryan's been back in Drowning Pool, and there's been no problems whatsoever. SOiL gets the shows done we need to. Drowning Pool gets the ones done they need to, and it's great. So there's really no complaints whatsoever on that front.
Now, you mentioned Wayne Static recommending a lead singer for you guys. Wayne also was on the album True Self. How far back do you go with him? Because Wayne was in Chicago there for a while. Did you know him from his Chicago days?
We actually met Wayne Static during the Scars record. He was a big fan of our Scars record. We didn't know him when he was in Chicago. We toured a ton with Static X back in the early 2000s on the Scars and Redefine albums. After he passed, we did a lot of touring with Static X as well when they got the band back together, with the new singer Zero and stuff like that. And we've maintained a really good friendship with all those guys. So I have to say, to give Static X, huge props and kudos is paid an amazing tribute to Wayne. And I'm really not a fan of when a band has a lead singer that passes away and the band keeps going. It's hard to kind of, recreate that. And, it's a tough thing to do, but they did it with such dignity and respect and in such a crazy cool way of not really having a replacement member, but more of a replacement like icon. It's almost like a hologram, but a real person. I think they did a very good job of paying tribute to Wayne and also carrying on the Static X legacy and name. And the stage show is unbelievable. So I don't think any band's ever done it quite so tastefully or perfectly than Static X. So I have a lot of respect and admiration for the way they went about it.
Now, what are your thoughts then on Fear Factory moving on without Burton C. Bell? He also was on True Self. How long have you known him, and what do you think about them continuing with a new lead singer?
Burton, super, super great friend of ours. We've known him since our Oppressor days, actually, when Fear Factory was more of a death metal band. And like the first album, Soul, A New Machine. And, Dino's always been a close friend. And, with something like that, it's a little bit different. Bands change lead singers. I mean, we changed the lead singer, so who am I to say, why Fear Factory would go on without Burton C. Bell? We went on with SOiL without Ryan, so bands do it all the time. And as long as everybody that's involved in that band is happy with where they're at and what they're doing, God bless them. When you build a brand and you're part of it and you give your soul to it, basically, it's not easy to leave it. It's not easy to say goodbye to it. And, musically you still burn and you still want to play and you still have ownership towards that. So, sometimes you feel like your work's not done yet. And if it's not, then you should carry on. I mean, I actually got to see Fear Factory on the Static X tour, and I thought they did a really good job.
I saw the same tour.
Yeah, Burton's a very dear friend of mine, and, he'll always be the original voice of Fear Factory to me, but, Fear Factory 2.0 is doing just fine. I'm happy for them. As long as they're happy doing what they do, I'm happy for them as well, He was just kind of over it. His time had run its course, and the band still wanted to keep going, and he didn't, and kind of just washed his hands of it, and they kept going the way they kept it going.
As a fan, though, what are your thoughts about Motley moving on without Mick? And we should have a new album sometime pretty soon with John 5. As a crew head, what are your feelings and thoughts on that?
Kind of a little bit of a tough one for me to swallow. Motley Crue fan shout at the devil. I heard it on the playground when I was in grade school and have been my favorite band ever since. A ton of the shows on the End tour. Really, really tough for me to even say this because they're my favorite band. I didn't quite, that when they did the End tour, they kept saying their bands that tour and then come back a few years later is EM tour. He's an amazing person, an amazing guitar player, so I'm a little bit disappointed as a fan, but
you're cutting out quite a bit, but I'll try to get in a last couple of questions if you can still hear me okay. How's the back to the 2000s?
You're catching us on
catching you what?
Road. So.
Oh, you're on the road? I'm going to let you go and say thank you for calling me on the road and best of luck on the tour if you can hear me.
Thank you.